Welcome on Speak Your Mind. I'm your host Shamilochan Lal, and my guest is Mr. Atish Kumar. He's the Assistant Director, Labour Standard Services with Ministry of Employment, Productivity and Industrial Relations. Welcome on the Talkback Show, Atish.
Hey, Shami, thank you.
Atish, the Fijian government in its Fiji First manifesto promised the Fijian people the upward revision of the national minimum wage. So this is the third time government has raised the national minimum wage since 2014. What is Fijian government's commitment towards this?
Thank you, Shami. Yes, it's very important in terms of understanding the concept of national minimum wage. What we have noticed is that our government has continuously increased, the national minimum wage to ensure that people who are paid in terms of the hours of work are given the decent wage. For example, when you look at the national minimum wage, the history of national minimum wage, the first minimum wage came into effect in 2014. 1st of March 2014, when government introduced the national minimum wage of $2 an hour. Then again in 2015, in 1st of July 2015, government increased national minimum wage to $2.32 an hour. And then again we can see that government is committed in terms of ensuring that we assist our people in getting decent wages. We ensure that the workers of this country are given the decent wages in terms of their weekly pay, their hours of work, and with that government increased the national minimum wage again to $2.68 an hour. That is coming into effect from 30th of September 2017. Now, when you look at the national minimum wage, it's very important for us to understand that the national minimum wage is assisting those unskilled workers who are not coming under the sectorial based minimum wages, where we can see that if somebody is employed in a house.
To say the informal sector, such
yes,
as
yes.
house helps, caregivers, backyard garage workers.
Yes. When you look at in terms of the sectorial based minimum wage, where we can see that people who are working in a wholesale retail industry, they have a different wages rates. People who are working in building and civil sector, they have got a different minimum wage. Yeah. And of course, people who are working in the garment industry, right? And they will also be getting the wage increase in terms of $2.68 an hour. So the national minimum wage is for those workers who are not covered under the sectorial based minimum wages. For example, those who work in the backyard garage, those who are working as domestic workers, they will get $2.68 an hour. And of course, this is the national minimum wage is only for those unskilled workers. Unskilled workers who may not have any particular form of skill, but they are actually learning those jobs. So their starting rate will be $2.68 an hour. Okay. In terms of looking at the national minimum wage, prior to 2014, prior to 1st of March 2014, when we had only the sectorial based minimum wage, but there was no national minimum wage. So what actually happened is it was the employers who were deciding what rate they will be paying these unskilled workers. For example, those who are working in the backyard garage, how much they will be paid, the employer will decide. And many times workers were paid about $1.20 or $1.50 an hour, some below that.
So there was fluctuations.
Exactly, there was fluctuations. And then government came in, and through our research and of course through commitment of government, of course we look at the 2013 constitution, it's very clear in terms of section 33(1)(2)(a), it says that right to work in just minimum wage.
So the national minimum wage hourly rate is now $2.68, which is
yes.
new and has been into effect from 30th September. What does this mean to the employers?
Thank you, Shami. Yes, very important is we have seen that a lot of employers are actually coming and actually implementing these rates, right? We also have our enforcement team that is going out and telling these employees, telling the workers what the rate is. We are also very thankful to government. Government has given us additional 14 inspectors who will be going out and conducting awareness and compliance in terms of the enforcement of national minimum wage and also the sectorial based minimum wage. So when you look at the sectorial based minimum wage, we look at in terms of the building and civil sector, Shami, the foreman is paid about $5.22 an hour. That's the minimum rate that is coming into effect from 30th of September. But when you look at the market, right, when you look at the market in terms of building and civil sector, we have seen that people are paid above, the skilled workers are paid above $7, $10, even $12 an hour. You must have seen that the ministry has also done a survey on this through the University of South Pacific in terms of ensuring that we conduct this survey, and of course the ministry has also hired the enumerators to get the interview these workers and also interview the employees to ensure that the rates in the implementation process. So what we have noted is, all in all, this is a collective effort. Of course, the government's commitment. We also have workers and employers coming in, and through that we have got this national minimum wage that came in.
So to better understand what is the national minimum wage under the law, what does it mean when we say national minimum wage under the law? What does it mean to an average listener and to the employer?
Thank you, Sami. National minimum wage means no worker should be paid below the national minimum wage. That's an important part. No worker should be paid below the national minimum wage, and we are committed in terms of ensuring that all workers are paid the national minimum wage, in terms of those who are in the unskilled sector, we can say, and those who are learning to become skilled workers, in terms of like particularly the car wash areas, people working in the car wash, people working in backyard garage, people working as domestic workers, they are actually being paid this $2.68 an hour. But we also seen that through commitment of workers and through commitment of employers, their rate gradually go up as the workers learn the skills, and as they move forward, their rate gradually go up. This is through our inspection. We have found out that a lot of these employers are paying way above the $2.68.
So how does the Fijian constitution justify the national minimum wage?
Thank you, Shami. Yes, it's very important. The 2013 constitution, of course, it's a constitution that is for the people, and of course for all Fijians in this country, and it is actually giving this the rights of to the workers. Rights in terms of just national minimum wage, in terms of ensuring that we have a national minimum wage that is going to help these workers, that is going to assist these workers in terms of getting decent wages, getting hours of work, and better terms and conditions for their employment.
Okay, so we will take a break, and we'll be right back to discuss about the national minimum wage, and do call us if you have any questions in regards to this. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind, and I have with me Atish Kumar, the Assistant Director, Labour Standard Services from Ministry of Employment. Atish, tell me, is there a difference between national minimum wage and wages regulations?
Yes, the national minimum wage, of course, is covering those sectors which are not covered by the wages regulations. For example, if wholesale retail sector, it's covered under the wages regulations, wholesale and retail. And then, of course, we have the mining, building and civil sector, mining and quarrying sector. We have the road transport sector. We have printing sector. We have manufacturing sector. So these sectors have their rates. When you look at the national minimum wage, of course, is covering those sectors which are not covered by the sectorial based minimum wage regulations.
So which means that shop sales assistant,
yes,
he will be able to benefit the national minimum wage.
The shop assistants will pay the rate of $3.12 an hour.
Okay, which is more.
Yes, of course. So when you look at the minimum rates in terms of the shop assistants, it talks about the regulation. It says that, of course, the cashier will pay $3.12 an hour, clerk will pay $3.12 an hour, and of course, a shop assistant will pay $3.12 an hour. So you can see that these rates are above the national minimum wage. And of course, when we talk about workers who are working in these sectors, of course, they have acquired those skills.
Okay.
They have acquired these skills to gain this right. And also, we have noted that a lot of these times, these workers are getting more than what is there in the regulation.
So while we talk about the national minimum wage, to people we had discussed who will benefit from these are garage workers, you said.
Yes.
These may be the house helps and all that. Is it compulsory then that the employer, that these employees benefit from the FNPF deduction as well?
Yes. In terms of those who are working at the backyard garage, those who are working in the car wash areas, these are workers, they must get the FNPF deducted from their wages. Of course, our colleagues from FNPF are actually working with our ministry. We are working together to ensure that we provide these informations, and of course there is information exchange between the two agencies to ensure that we get out to these employers, those who are not complying, we together move in and actually ensure that these employers are complying. And of course we thank the employers. We have been getting assistance from them in terms of ensuring that they get the right information. They've been coming to our ministry, we have been discussing these issues, and of course there have been there are situations where we have seen that employers actually are paying more than the minimum rate that is required.
Let's talk about the benefits of the national minimum wage to Fijian people, to the Fijian people and the economy. How is it going to benefit?
Yes, thank you, Shami. I think it's important for us as Fijians that we are proud that our country, for the first time, has achieved an economic growth, of consecutive economic growth for the past 8 years. That is in itself, as a Fijian, we should be proud that we are moving forward, and we are moving forward together as a nation, right? And of course, we can see that with this, it's also benefiting the people. We have seen that government has increased the national minimum wage within a span of about 3 years. We have increased 3 times the national minimum wage, in 2014, then in 15, and again in 2017. This in itself guarantees that, of course, there is economic growth, and of course it's trickling down to the people. Of course, we can also see that with the national minimum wage, we also have other social protection, of course, assistance given by government in terms of ensuring that they help those people, right, who are paid in terms of the national minimum wage, who are paid. Of course, we can see that the 2017 and 2018 budget, we have seen that the tax threshold has gone up to $30,000. And we've also seen that assistance given to families in terms of education. We also have like free bus fare, free textbook, and free tuition, of course, given to our children. And of course, with that, we can also see that people are assisted in terms of through the Ministry of Employment, through the National Employment Center. We have been organizing and arranging for employment overseas. There is also money coming into the country. We also have the Social Welfare Department assisting families. So these are all indications of positive economic growth, as indication in terms of ensuring that our country is moving forward at a very fast pace to ensure that our people are benefiting. And of course, the national minimum wage is one of the guarantees to say that the $2.68 an hour within a span of 3 years, we have increased this rate. Prior to 2014, as you know, there was no national minimum wage. So these workers who were working in these backyard garage, who were working in as a domestic workers, they were basically paid at the whim of the employer. Whatever the employer wants to pay, they pay. But after 1st of March 2014, we have seen that government has regulated a rate which the employer must pay. And of course, 268 is a rate, of course, that is coming into effect from 30th of September, and which all employers who are covered in the national minimum wage must pay their workers.
So, after this, after it comes into effect, which has come into effect, how will Ministry monitor this policy to ensure that all employers abide and adhere to it?
Yes, I think when you, as I have said previously, and of course, if you can, you can see the Honourable Minister for Economy's address in Parliament, it's very important that we enforce these rates, right? And of course, for that, government assisted us by giving additional inspectors who will be on the ground to ensure that those employers who are not complying, those employers who are not complying, we will be going in. Of course, we will be ensuring that we enforce these rates to them, so that that particular worker and those particular workers are they should benefit. If there is a rate that is coming into effect, then of course the workers should benefit, and the employer must ensure that they update their books to pay these workers their rightful rate. And we will be going out. And in fact, we have started in terms of creating awareness. Our Honourable Minister is currently conducting road shows, of course, to ensure that all employers and workers know about these minimum rates, about the national minimum wage, about the sectoral based minimum wage, what they are required to do,
how they So the awareness, you'll continue the awareness, so that people know about it and are more empowered, and they will be able to exercise their rights. We'll be right back after this short break to understand and to know more about the national minimum wage. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind. I'm your host Shami Lochan, and I have Atish Kumar from Ministry of Employment and Regulations to talk about the national minimum wage, which has now been increased to $2.68. Now, Atish, with this increase, like we discussed earlier, that the laborers, the officials will be working with the stakeholders. How has the new legislation shifted the role of the labor officials? Is there going to be, will you need more resources, more people? How will they work with people, employers?
Yes, thank you, Shami. Yes, I think when you look at in terms of enforcement and compliance, the enforcement and compliance from 2014 till to date, we can say we have paid out a total of around $2.4 million to workers. These wages we have recovered from those employers who were not complying. Right, so we have inspectors on the ground. We have the inspectors who are actually going in, advising employers, and after advising, if we continue to see the employer is not complying, of course, we get the records, we calculate the rates of pay which the worker is required to be paid from the day the regulation came into effect, and then we backdate that, and of course, then the employer is required to pay these workers, and of course, we have paid out a total of 2.4 million. For the past 3 years to these workers. We have another around $5 million worth of claim that is still being computed by our team. Of course, it's going through the process to ensure that all those workers who we were required to be paid the wages rates which the employer has not paid, they should pay. That's the main thing. They should pay, including the FNPF reductions. So we're working closely with the Fiji National Provident Fund to ensure that these workers also benefit in terms of their FNPF reductions and FNPF claims.
So what if someone is not paid? How will you know, or how can people, where do people report to?
Yes, thank you, Sami. Yes, what we do is we create awareness through media, and of course we go out through roadshow. Of course, currently our minister is doing that. We also go out in terms of door-to-door inspection. This is where the inspectors go out in the field and of course check the employer's wages and time record. We also interview workers to ensure that these workers are paid the right rate. We have conducted a survey to get in terms of those employees who are not complying. And what we have also noted, Shami, is that there is a lot of support coming out from the employers, of course from the workers. We have seen that a lot of employers have increased their rate. A lot of employers have increased the rate above the $2.68 because they are able to, these workers are able to provide best results for them. We have seen that in terms of sectoral based minimum wages, these workers in the sales sector, if they are paid $3.12 an hour, of course, employers have increased their rate. So this is where we encourage in terms of good faith employment relations, where the employer and the worker, of course, the compliance team is there to guide them and to assist them. And of course, if the employer is not complying, and after providing them with the information, if the employer still doesn't want to pay, then of course we have got the legal process that follows.
Do you foresee any challenges?
We have, in fact, we have seen certain challenges that came when the first national minimum wage came into effect, but through awareness and compliance and through providing information to the members of the public, we have been able to overcome those challenges. And we have seen that by providing information to our people, they are able to come out and of course give the information to our compliance team, to the ministry, to say that this is where these workers are employed and they are not paid the minimum wage. We also encourage members of public, they can always report a matter to the Ministry of Employment. We have seen that our ministers have been going out in the field, talking to the workers, talking to the people, and we also seen the Honorable Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister has been going out and talking to the people. And of course, people have been discussing, in terms of their wages, in terms of the hours of work, all issues, And of course, this is the level of commitment our government has in terms of ensuring that our people are benefiting from the laws that we have.
So you're having a very friendly approach towards to include the employers, the workers, and the workers' representatives.
Yes, we are trying to ensure that everyone is included because we are moving forward. As a country, we are moving forward, and we want to ensure that no one is left out. Right? We have to build a better Fiji, and of course the vision of our government, of course, is always we must build a better Fiji for everyone.
So did you face a situation or a challenge where an employee was underpaid? When we look at the national minimum wage to workers in the informal sectors, And when they reported this matter to the concerned body, was anyone victimized? How was this situation handled? Do you receive such complaints?
Yes, thank you, Shami. If in any case, if any worker feels that he or she has been victimized by the employer for reporting a matter, and of course the worker has a right in terms of going through the mediation process through the ministry in terms of raising the grievance, and of course it goes through the process, and of course that's free of charge, where a worker can raise a grievance that a particular employer has, somehow or the other the employer has victimized the worker, and if the worker is unable to settle the matter within in terms of the Employment Relations Act, then of course the worker can come to the mediation services of the ministry, and then they take their case through in terms of mediation. If the matter is not resolved, of course this goes to the employment tribunal. But this is free of charge. The worker, and of course the ministry is also providing legal representation to workers in the employment tribunal if they are unable to afford a lawyer, or if there are situations where a worker is requesting ministry to assist. So what we are doing is we are trying to ensure that we provide justice to these workers. And of course our compliance team, on the other hand, we also calculate in terms of what wages the worker was required to be paid. For example, if a worker is required to be paid a rate of $3.12 in the sales industry, in the wholesale retail sector, if the worker is not paid, then of course the employer must backdate from the day the regulation came into effect and pay the worker. If in any situation the employer, after discussing, employer fails to pay, then we have got the penalty process that comes in. We always encourage employers that the law is there, they must comply, they must pay. But if the employer, of course, after advising, we give in terms of the employers to comply after conducting awareness. If the employer fails to, and of course the law is there to take its course in terms of ensuring that that particular worker, that employer complies with the law, and that particular worker gets the benefit in terms of the increased wages rates.
Okay, thank you, Atish. We'll be right back to discuss more on fixed penalty notice if an employer fails to adhere to the national minimum wage, the new national minimum wage. What will be the penalty? So we'll be right back. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind. And Atish, we were talking about the national minimum wage, and the national minimum wage has come into effect from 30th September, which is $2.68 per hour for informal sector. If an employer fails to adhere to this new national minimum wage, what is the fixed penalty? And how will you go about serving the penalty notices?
Thank you, Shami. Yes, an important point is to ensure that that particular employer adheres to the new national minimum wage and also the sectorial based minimum wages. That is an important point that we must look into and ensure that we request all employers to please update your books, to please ensure that your particular worker who is working with you benefits from this increase in wages rates. And of course government is concerned about it. If an employer fails to pay, then of course we have the fixed penalty process where the fixed penalty ranges from $100 up to $500, and also we have the process where we can take the matter up to the employment tribunal, where the fine ranges from $10,000 to $20,000, of course, to a maximum $50,000. where an employer fails to comply with the law. So this is an important point which we want to raise. And of course, one thing I look at it is that the court process and of course the issuance of fixed penalty is the last resort, where the employer fails to comply. That's when the ministry comes in, and after we have exhausted all means, then of course the penalty process comes in. But first we are encouraging the employers is, this is the law in force, and you have to comply. What
kind of response are you getting from the employers?
Thank you, Shami. Yes, we have been on the ground, and of course we have been out to ensure that the employers are made aware of this, and we have been getting very good response from employers. We have noted and we have seen that a lot of employers are actually paying above the minimum rate, and I think this is a important point where we can see that the employers are now coming out and of course paying workers above what is what is there in the law. And then of course we have got employers who are coming in, of course discussing with our ministry in terms of ensuring that when the national minimum wage comes into effect and when the sectoral based minimum wage comes into effect from 3rd of September, they update their books. And of course our inspectors will be out in the field. They are currently out in the field conducting awareness and also checking through in terms of their records. And
how often do you check the records?
Shami, normally what we do is when we are checking the records of an employer, we check in terms of 6 months in yearly basis. For example, currently there is a new national minimum wage comes into effect from 30th of September. So we will ensure that we will check these employers' records. We will provide awareness to them. And we have also seen that members of the public have been coming to our ministry, calling our ministry, and of course calling the Honourable Minister, calling the Permanent Secretary, and of course they have also called me in terms of advising that there are certain employees who are not complying. So we also go and check these employers. We also have received complaints from workers where they advise us that they are working for a particular industry and they have not been paid the minimum rate. So we don't disclose their names, of course, but what we do is we just do a random check. We provide awareness to the employer and we advise the employer that they need to pay those rates. But
so does this national minimum wage include overtime? For example, under the national minimum wage to all workers in the informal sectors, like we mentioned, house helps and caregivers, backyard garage workers, etc., to name a few, if they work 8 hours, right? 8 hours is required to work, which is not inclusive of lunch hour.
Right.
Okay, so if they do get the lunch hour, tea breaks, whatever, if they continue working for more than 8 hours, do they still get this minimum wage $2.60 an hour, or can they get an overtime? Okay, so how is this?
Okay, when you look at the national minimum wage, this is where the good faith employment relations comes in, between the employer and the worker. A lot of times when you look at the domestic sector, people are working for about 5 to 7 hours. Sometimes people work more than that. That's where the $2.68 rate comes in. And then of course, if an employer is requiring the service of a worker beyond the normal hours, then of course they discuss in terms of the payment, how they are going to pay the worker. And then we encourage employees and workers to have a contract done. That's very important, to have a contract done so that they will exactly know how much they will be paying.
As long as they're paid for the hours they work, whether it's $2.68, right, the national minimum wage. Yes. It shouldn't be a case whereby they work for 8 hours, but they have worked additional 2 hours, and the employer, whoever, says, it's okay, we have paid you for 8 hours, and thank you for working for 2 hours voluntarily. No. That shouldn't be the case, right?
That shouldn't be the case. It is not allowed. The employer must pay the worker for the hours the worker has worked.
Okay.
It is not a situation where the worker will work voluntarily 3 hours and you only pay them for 5 hours. No.
Just out of curiosity, what if they finish working quite late after hours, where there is no public transportation? Does it become the employer's responsibility to provide transport to them?
Yes, of course. There is a responsibility of the employer to ensure that they discuss in terms of providing public transport.
Which should not be deducted from their wages?
No, of course, this is not deducted from their wages. And in situations where there is no public transport, and of course, it is a responsibility of the employer to provide transport to their worker to their destination. That's very important.
Does the ministry have a record of the number of workers in the informal sector?
We have, in fact, estimated around 150,000 workers in terms of these informal sectors, and of course that too fluctuates.
Is this including people in rural and island areas as well?
Yes, of course. And of course it also fluctuates. For example, when you look at the informal sector, it depends in terms of peak time employment. When you see there is of course in terms of the looking at the agriculture sector, we can see that when there is a harvesting season, we can see more workers being employed, and of course there is off-peak season too. When you look at the Western Northern Division, we can see that during cane harvesting season, we can see more workers are being employed, and we can see that a lot of SMEs, are assisted. They are coming up in terms of their activities, what they are trying to sell. So this fluctuates, and of course the off-peak hours, when you see that situations where there may not be more activities in the agriculture sector. We can see that there may be situations where workers are being self-employed. So we also encourage in terms of ensuring that workers who are working in these sectors to be paid, to ensure that they are paid the national minimum wage.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you, Atish, and we'll be right back. So do join us in our last segment on Speak Your Mind after this break. Welcome back on Speak Your Mind. This is our last segment with Atish Kumar, Assistant Director, Labour Standard Services with Ministry of Employment. So Atish, with the increase in the national minimum rate, which is now $2.68 to the informal sector, workers in informal sector, are they bound by any contract? Will they be able to get maternity leaves, etc.? Are there benefits attached to this?
Yes, Shami, I think when you look at the Employment Relations Act, the Employment Relations Act provides minimum terms and conditions of employment. Of course, that is 10 days annual leave, 10 days sick leave, maternity leave, of course, bereavement leave.
Which is imperative, very important.
Very, very important. And that applies to any worker in Fiji, as long as there is a contract of service.
And to the informal sector.
Yes,
what we're
also applies to the informal sector, where workers will enjoy in terms of the benefits provided in the law. And of course, what we have seen is that the employers are actually providing these benefits. We have also seen that there are certain employees who are not providing these benefits. That's where the compliance team goes in and actually checks in terms of the hours of work, in terms of the maternity provision, in terms of ensuring that workers are paid their sick leave, their annual leave, and their bereavement leave. For example, in terms of payment of sick leave, it's important that the worker provides a medical certificate to the employer. And of course, in terms of ensuring that the worker is paid their annual leave, it's very important that the worker gets his or her annual leave after completion of a year of service with the employer. But if they
so can we be sure to say, or how proactive we have been to monitor the fact that these people working in the informal sector are paid for this sick leave? Is there a way to monitor?
Yes.
Is it happening?
Yes, we have, in fact, Shami, we have the enforcement team is actually going out and monitoring this, and we are proud to say that the workers themselves have been coming in to lodge a complaint with us if they are not paid their.
Is it because they do not know how to exercise their right, or is it because out of fear, or are we sure that there has been enough awareness?
Yes, so I think when you look at our government's intention is to empower Fijians, and we have seen that our government has continually empowered every Fijian to ensure they know their rights, they know their responsibilities. You have seen that our ministers have been going out, conducting road shows, meeting with members of public. Of course, our Honourable Prime Minister has been going out, meeting members of public to ensure that we take the information right to the grassroots level. And this is where we have seen that workers have been coming in, lodging complaint with our ministry, seeking information from our ministry, and of course ensuring that we provide the best service to them. In any situation, if there is any employer who has not provided this service, of course we go in. We record the workers' complaint, we discuss with the employer, and if the employer has not paid the rightful wages, then of course we demand from the employer that they must pay the rightful wages.
Because there may be a situation with backyard garage workers also, they may be receiving their wages for if they produce a sick sheet, right? So if in case of a house help and for caregivers, I wonder how many of them do get paid on sick leave?
Yes, we have received complaints on that, and we have investigated that, and there are situations where employers, if the medical certificate is there, then employer is required to pay.
Do they have to get a medical certificate for being sick for one day, or does it have to be for more than 2 days?
I think it's important that the worker provides a medical certificate.
Okay.
Yes, only.
What if this employer in this informal sector again, an example I would give is for house helps, are not able to attend to work for a day or two, and they have provided the sick sheet, and they're not paid. What do they do?
Of course, what happens is if the employer has not paid them the required
Because the
sick sheet,
employer could be the owner of the house,
yes,
where the person is working to.
so the employer is required to pay them. Of course, if in a situation the employer is not paying them the sick sheet, then of course the worker can lodge a complaint with the ministry. And of course, we also encourage the workers and the employees to ensure that the minimum terms and conditions are followed. And it is important that the employer complies with that. There is no two ways about it. If a worker is required to pay 10 days sick leave in a year, worker provides a medical certificate in terms of the sick sheet. Of course, the worker gets the medical.
I think this is something very proactive and very good, which the government has done.
Yes.
To increase the national minimum wage to $2.68 to those in informal sectors, to empower them, and to make sure that there is bread and butter and more than enough on their table. And I think it does become the employer's responsibility to see that we do adhere to this, so that we have a healthy and a happy Fiji as a nation. There is another regulation which talks about the Fijian government has also increased the wage rates of the 10 sectoral wages regulations. What does this mean?
Thank you, Sham. Yes, the 10 sectoral wages regulations is those sectors which are covered in terms of wholesale retail sector, mining and quarrying sector, road transport sector, garment industry, manufacturing industry, we have printing industry. All these sectors are covered under the sectorial based minimum wage. So when the national minimum wage is increased, these sectors rates too have increased. So you can see that it's benefiting everyone. It's not only benefiting the workers who are under the national minimum wage, but it's also benefiting those who are working as a sales assistants, those who are working as cashiers, those who are working in the road transport sector, those who are working in the building and civil sector. In
garment industries,
garment
you mentioned sawmilling, logging, road transport, and also it applies to printing trades and wholesalers and retailers, so at large.
Yes. So it is affecting in terms of the minimum rates of pay. It has increased for every sector, the 10 sectoral sector and also the national minimum wages. So that is, of course, in itself an achievement for the country, and of course for us all Fijians, that we have benefited from the 80 years of economic growth. That the country has achieved.
Atish, in conclusion, would you like to remind the employers their responsibility? I know that you have a very good policy in place to move forward and to work with your stakeholders. What is one thing that you'd like to stress with the employers when it comes to their responsibilities?
Thank you, Shami. The important thing for all employees and workers is to ensure that this national minimum wage and the sectoral based minimum wage is hitting the pockets of the workers. And also employers will need to ensure that they update their wages and time records. They must maintain and keep wages and time records, so that whenever inspectors come in to inspect, they are able to show these wages and time records and the updated rates of pay. The rates comes into effect from 30th of September. And of course, it's a responsibility of every employer to pay the workers their rates, the minimum rates of pay under their relevant sectors. And also we request employees, if they have any issue, workers, if they have any issue, they can always come to our ministry.
Thank you very much, Atish. And we'd like to thank you for taking your time out, and to the Ministry of Employment, Productivity and Industrial Relations, to the government of Fiji for increasing the national minimum wage to $2.68. A lot of people are going to benefit, and if you do face challenges, please do get in touch with Atish and to the ministry concerned. Thank you for joining me on the show. We will meet on Tuesday again on Speak Your Mind next week.